You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Stop missing out on great TV and get thousands of new shows with ExpressVPN. We've got them to give you guys 3 extra months free when you use our special link, expressvpn.com/missionlog. That's expressvpn.com/missionlog to get 3 extra months completely free.
This episode is also sponsored by Master Replicas. Find the largest collection of rare Starship models from your favorite franchises, like Doctor Who, Alien, Stargate, and a little show called Star Trek at masterreplicas.com. Be the first to know about exclusive drops at masterreplicas.com.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 521, Unforgettable.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I'm John Champion. Each week on Mission Log, we examine, then try to remember the details of an episode of Star Trek, writing it all down before we forget so we can share the morals, meanings, and messages with you.
This week, Unforgettable, the one where Chakotay falls in love with an alien woman on the run. Then he meets and falls in love with an alien woman on the run.
I'll be back with trivia shortly. But first, Norman, why don't you tell everyone how to reach us?
Mission Log is a conversation about Star Trek. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook at Mission Log Pod. While you're at it, leave us a review and a rating at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And please remember, your comments could be used on Mission Log or engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel.
Hey, we'll get to trivia in a moment, but how about a word from our sponsor this week, Master Replicas? Norman, you know what it's like when you meet someone and then maybe you forget and then they come back and you fall in love with them all over again?
Who are you?
Well, see, that's kind of like what happened with Master Replicas and Eaglemoss. So remember Eaglemoss? Of course we remember Eaglemoss. They were the ones who made all those incredible teeny tiny starships that we fell in love with. Well, they are back because Master Replicas has that entire collection. They have the 400 plus unique models from Star Trek. That's just from Star Trek alone, along with starships and vehicles from so many other franchises that you already love. I mean, think about Alien and Stargate and Doctor Who and so many more. That's what you would find at masterreplicas.com.
Let's slow down for a second. Let me write this down. If I had a pen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to need to commit that to paper so it doesn't get lost if you get a computer virus or something.
Here's an important detail for all of you. Grab a pen and paper. Mm-hmm. Remember, John, all those, do you remember all those beautiful hand-finished ships from Eaglemoss?
I do. I'm not forgetting those at all. No.
Well, sadly, they're not being made anymore. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. But Master Replicas has been able to acquire all the old stock and that are now selling it off. So they still got most of the things. But if you want to get any of, say, the Enterprises or Voyager or the Defiant or some of the more obscure ships, to fill out your collection, now's the time.
Is it sort of like an obscure ship like the Prometheus?
Both sizes of the Prometheus. Actually, 3 Promethei. You have the Stargate SG-1 Prometheus, you have the small Prometheus from Message in a Bottle, and then you have the XL version, which is probably one of the finest ships that they've made.
There we go.
I think
now
so.
We're talking.
As far as I can remember. So we're not sure if you'll be able to get any of these ships in the future, at least not at these prices. And dare I say, don't go on eBay because some of the ships there, they're going for exorbitant prices, like over $1,000. But Master Replicas now are selling them for close to the original prices.
Well, that is the best news that I've heard all day. And look, you already know about the quality and the detail in these tiny starships because we have waxed poetic about them for years. They are just so good. And whenever possible, they were made using the original CG models that were used to make the visual effects for your favorite shows. Now, Master Replicas have only got the rights to sell these for a certain amount of time. And you may be asking me, but John, Norman, how long? Well, stick with us. We will update you right here. In the meantime, don't delay. Go to masterreplicas.com. Of course, tell them Mission Log sent you when you place your first order, but sign up for their newsletter so you can be the first to know about special promotions and exclusive drops. That address again, masterreplicas.com.
And now here's John Champion with this week's trivia.
All right, trivia for Unforgettable. We have an episode written by Greg Elliott and Michael Perricone. Not names that we've seen too often, but we have encountered this writing team before. Greg and Michael got the teleplay credit for Prime Factors back in Voyager's first season. That was a story by David R. George and Eric Stillwell. But this time, Greg and Michael, well, they get the credit for the whole thing. And here ends their association with Trek. But don't worry, they both went on to executive story editor roles on Charmed. And while Greg only added a few more writing credits to his resume, Michael has been very busy working nonstop in sound production for film and TV. The episode was directed by Andrew Robinson, and we all know that name for sure. Garrick has jumped over again from DS9. By this time, he had already directed one each of DS9 and Voyager. Those would be Looking for Parmak in All the Wrong Places and Blood Fever, respectively. He really appreciated the opportunity here to focus on a more relationship-driven story than an action or effects-driven. And, of course, we will see Andrew's credit again. Let's meet our guest stars. We get to know two Remurans. There's Corneth, played by Michael Canavan, and you may not recognize him right away, but we've seen Michael before in the DS9 episode Defiant. His character Tamal was a Maquis, and we're not done with Michael yet. He will be back for one more appearance, that time as a Vulcan in Enterprise. And then there's Kellen, played by Virginia Madsen. When this episode was made, and now, Virginia is known as a versatile and multi-award-winning actor. She was nominated for an Academy Award for her role in Sideways in 2005, and along the way, she had picked up awards for her role in Candyman in 1993, plus multiple Cable Ace Awards and too many Critics Circle Awards to count here. One of her earliest roles was in the 1983 Rob Lowe vehicle Class, and over the years, Virginia easily worked between film and TV and voice work, and then back again. And she continues to make feature film and TV appearances as of this recording, and even has a voice credit in the 2019 Candyman sequel. Now, Norman, I told you earlier that I wasn't even going to try to go through Virginia's resume because there's just too much, but you've got a couple of favorites in there.
Oh, absolutely. And not to begrudge the fandom for Highlander, but she appeared in probably the most notorious of the Highlander franchise films. That would be Highlander 2: The Quickening. Now, even though that it had multiple cuts, didn't really change like her role too much. However, her character name in the movie was Louise Marcus, who was a scientist, physicist. I'm not exactly sure if she was called Dr. Marcus, but we would have had a Dr. Marcus in that movie. And I do love that she was in Candyman with Tony Todd, who also is probably one of the most famous Star Trek alumnus.
Yes, definitely. And for anybody who was wondering if you didn't already look it up or didn't already know, yes, Virginia is the sister of fellow actor Michael Madsen. And so far, this is Virginia's only Star Trek appearance.
Welcome to the Delta Quadrant, where Hit It and Forget It takes on a whole new meaning.
Prologue. Harry Kim updates Chakotay and Tom Paris about working with 7 of 9 on sensor modifications when Voyager is rocked by something. It takes a moment to realize that they're in the crossfire of 2 cloaked ships. When one of them explodes and the other is badly damaged, a woman's voice hails Voyager and specifically asks Chakotay for help. Act 1. An away team beams over to the alien vessel to look for the pilot. When Chakotay finds her, she says that she knew he would come, and the two are beamed to sickbay. She's unconscious at the moment, but the doctor makes the observation that his tricorder can't seem to record her health data. In any case, he can tell she is concussed, but will be fine. When she awakens, she asks Janeway for asylum. Naturally, the captain has many questions, but promises a fair review of her request. As to how she knows Chakotay, well, that's complicated. Kellen is a Remuran, and her people have the uncanny biological trait of causing anyone they encounter to forget all about them. They've extended that to technology, too, as a self-preservation measure. About a month ago, Kellen spent a few weeks on Voyager with Chakotay's assistance. She left, knowing he would forget. But now she's back because she needs asylum, and she fell in love with him. Act 2. The senior staff consider Kellen's claim, but need to back it up with evidence. Navigation logs indicate that Kellen's ship did indeed fly alongside Voyager for more than 2 weeks. While Seven and Tuvok dig further, Kellen and Chakotay get to know each other over a meal. She recounts the story how she was on board for 2 days, cloaked, looking for the runaway she was sent to track. It's a Remuran thing. They have a strict stay-at-home policy. When her cover was blown, Chakotay found her and, well, they fell in love over their time working together. But Chakotay doesn't remember at all, and he sees her now as a stranger. Kellen is perhaps not surprised, but obviously saddened. Then Voyager is rocked again as Remuran ships open fire, looking for Kellen. Act 3. The attacking ships are relentless until Kellen asks permission to modify Voyager's sensors. Janeway confers with Chakotay. This means yes or no for asylum, and he's convinced to let her stay. The modification works, which gives Tuvok a clean shot to scare off the Remurans, for now. They'll be back as long as Voyager is in range, and then some. But Kellen is aboard for good now, and her first task is to make the sensor modifications permanent. In a private moment with Chakotay, she expresses her worry that the Remurans will come back for her, but Chakotay reassures her. She says that his kindness is the reason she came back. Later in the mess hall, Chakotay is looking for something to help him sleep. Neelix pours some herbal tea and offers up some advice, too. Kellen clearly likes Chakotay, and maybe Chakotay's hesitation is not trusting his own feelings. Still later, a visitor comes to Chakotay's quarters. We know who it is, and she needs to talk. Chakotay is still hesitant about their relationship, but she wants to know if he can feel something for her. Otherwise, her presence puts Voyager at risk, and she'll voluntarily go back to Remura. Chakotay simply says, "Don't go." Act 4. Things in Chakotay's quarters get a little closer when Kellen enjoys ice cream and then relays the story of their previous last night together. Chakotay had helped her track down a Remuran fugitive on Voyager, and they celebrated with champagne. She then reenacts the passionate kiss that they shared that night, tempered by the fact that she had to leave and he would forget her. But not this time. As a part of the crew now, Kellen needs a job, and Tuvok offers to see if she's a good fit for the security team. He also suggests that her knowledge of Remuran tech could be useful to Seven and Harry in designing defenses, because they will be back at some point. In astrometrics, the three get to work. Harry thinks they might have an advantage by scattering the Remuran weapons beam, and he hands over a proposal. Kellen will review his work, and as she leaves, Seven notes that Kellen became a little flush at the mention of Chakotay. Harry tries to explain that humanoid courtship rituals are, well, complex, and it goes right past Seven, and Harry for that matter. As Kellen proceeds down a corridor, she has an unsettling feeling that a Remuran tracer is there to find her, and she's right. There's a broken vase in Chakotay's quarters. As soon as she expresses her worry to Chakotay, the tracer appears, weapon ready, and fires at Kellen. Chakotay is too late. The weapon, a neurolytic emitter, goes to work, wiping Kellen's memory. Act 5. In sickbay, there's nothing the doctor can do. Kellen's memories of Chakotay and everything she has recently experienced are fading. She pleads for help and a promise from Chakotay that he will remind her of their relationship the way she did to him. Chakotay then goes to the brig to confront the tracer, Kurnath. There is nothing he can do to reverse the effects of the neurolytic emitter, and even if he could, he wouldn't tell Chakotay. Their secrecy is part of their law, the bedrock of their social cohesion. When Kellen is released from sickbay, she is released to Chakotay's quarters. She doesn't recognize him when he enters, and he tries to recount the story, how she first came to Voyager, and how she returned, and how they were in love. She has no memory of it, and she's unsettled by Chakotay's admission. He asks her to stay, to help her remember. But Kellen says that's the reason she needs to go. She violated Remuran law, and staying would be worse. Kellen, Kurnath, and Chakotay gather in the transporter room. When they say their goodbyes, Kellen says that Chakotay is a kind person, and ever so faintly smiles as she and Kurnath are beamed over to the Remuran ship. Chakotay and the rest of the crew's memory of Kellen and their Remuran encounter will fade by the next day, but he's at work in the mess hall late in the evening. He's writing down the story of Kellen's visit, pen to paper, so he won't forget. And he wonders why two people who fell in love twice couldn't do it again. Neelix suggests that being able to predict love would take away its power. The end.
Wonderful and specifically memorable recap there, John. That is something that I will not forget for at least 10 seconds.
At least. I mean, the nature of doing our show, I will probably forget it in exactly 5 days. So that's about the window, you know. Then we get to working on the next one.
Wipe the slate clean, start fresh. You know, just like a Remoran courting ritual. So
yes, sure. Exactly. So top of the episode, I appreciate how the exposition that Harry is giving rather to Tom and Chakotay is cut off by a character, Chakotay, who is weary of exposition. You know, but, like, it's perfect in universe, and it's perfect just sort of like out of universe from the production and audience standpoint as well.
He seems a little short at the beginning. You know,
does.
A little
he does.
curt, as they say.
Uh-huh.
It's a good thing that Seven's making unauthorized modifications on no one's behalf but herself. You know, that even Voyager's internal sensors can't calibrate. I mean, isn't that dangerous?
Yeah, no, they just, hey, you know, give her an inch, she takes a mile. That's, yeah.
No Starfleet OSHA in the Delta Quadrant.
No,
right?
no. And, of course, we have to lead into yet another joke about Harry's proximity to Seven. Tom,
you know what? I saw this, and I said to myself, I know I'm going to have to make an observation about this, but here's what I'd like to do. And I'd like to make this promise to myself, to you, and maybe to the audience as well. Okay. Maybe because I'm only human. I feel like I've made a lot of my feelings very plain, kind of like on this, and I can't change the past. Mm-hmm. Obviously, neither can Tom, because, you know, his behavior is pretty transparent. But I'm going to try and be better about just accepting it for what it is, because I've already spent more time on this than I actually would like. Yeah. You know?
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's one of those tough things, because it is like you give the production the benefit of the doubt. Like they're feeling out something about how these characters interact, and this is the groove that they found for them, which is this very uncomfortable groove.
Yeah.
But they just kind of ran with it, and that's not to take anything away from the actors here, but it is just going back to the well for this ineffective thing that's kind of played for comedy, but it's not. It's just cringy, and I would like for us all to move on from it.
So here's a technical thing. If astrometrics sensors can detect invisible disturbances like the cloaked ships that are fighting, and the main bridge sensors can't, then why not just upgrade the main sensors to the astrometric sensors?
It should just all be astrometrics at that point.
Right?
Yeah.
Just make that the new bridge.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, I like that idea. Yeah.
So here's another technical thing. So in Caretaker, they made a very specific point for Tom to give Neelix and Kes comm badges when they escaped Kes's planet, the Ocampan planet. so that they can be detected by Voyager for transport because they don't have their biological patterns on file. That's right, folks. I went this far back to make this point. So why doesn't Chakotay just give Kellen a comm badge when she's trapped into the bulkhead so that she doesn't get crushed if she doesn't roll out in time?
I thought a similar thing, or just with him being there and just kneeling down near her, couldn't he just call over and say, Voyager 2 to beam directly to sickbay?
Minus the beam.
Minus the beam.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But I thought that would work too. Yeah, it's a bit of dramatics, but it's okay. Yeah. All right, so about the Remorans, apparently they have pheromones to block long-term memory. Very interesting idea, interesting biological thing that they have. But then in about the same breath, we learn that they also are just impervious to all other technology for recording. I mean, talk about a hand-waving explanation. It's like, yeah, our biology is complex and we evolved this way and this is what we do. Yeah, technology too. Move on.
You know, I understand where you're going with this, and I agree. And I am going to make a point later on about referencing something along the lines of, is this tangential to evolutionary development, like chameleons changing color or camouflage defense systems for, species, things like that. Also hand waving, because that's a great evolutionary defense mechanism.
It is. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the meal in mess hall. We have to do. There's fried tofu, there's buttered carrots, and almond pudding. And my notes, the extent of my notes on this are what the ... question mark, because that just makes no sense whatsoever. But okay, all right. And Chakotay doesn't like it.
Where do you get fried tofu in the Delta Quadrant?
I don't know, but it wasn't even a scene where Neelix had to give some funny alien explanation for it. It was no, it was soy meal and carrots with butter and almond pudding. It wasn't like, he made up something and here's, Kazan pudding made with,
mealworms or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was kind of a weird, very ordinary thing. But at least of that combination of food, we can say Chakotay don't like it, rock the mess hall.
I do like that she's very specific about what he likes and dislikes in terms of food.
Yeah.
And when you know that about someone, that's kind of an intimate detail. Because some
really
people
is.
don't really like sharing, why don't you like that meal? Well, because...
Yeah.
So there is a nice little bit of exposition there, kind of proving the authenticity of her story.
And not done in that weird sort of gotcha way that a lot of times, think back to Imposter Tom. Chakotay, remember we had this conversation and I told you this thing. Instead, this was a very sweet kind of intimacy. I know this cute thing about you.
Sweet as almond pudding. Which she likes.
Right. Yeah. I could go for some almond pudding. That
sounds pretty good.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. And then in the flashback sequence, as she's describing how they met, and she says, I felt an attraction right away. You were at gunpoint.
True.
that was it was a really odd juxtaposition of the story and the visual going on. You're both holding weapons on each other. Okay.
Well, maybe it's a Remoran thing.
Maybe it is.
Some people like juggle geese. I don't know. I'm not here to judge.
And then followed by the dramatic get up from the table and stare out the window maneuver.
Yeah.
Very good job with that one, Kellen. Followed by the classic fall into his arms when the explosions start maneuver. Right. Very good. Very good. She's learned a lot about drama since she's been there.
Now, we usually don't skip ahead into the show, but I want to make one specific point where I think this scene is wonderful how it bookends to the rest of the episode or towards the end of the episode with Chakotay. Kellen says, you keep trying to jump to the end. This is when they're talking about her relationship or her supposed relationship. You're skipping all the parts about us. And Chakotay says, and you keep trying to talk about your feelings. I'd rather you stick to the events, not the emotions surrounding them. I'm smooth, Chakotay.
Yeah, right.
It's really interesting how in the beginning he was like this. And at the end, the Tracer was like Chakotay, and Chakotay was like Kellen.
Yes. Yeah.
And I thought that it was wonderful symmetry with these two scenes.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Totally agreed. When Chakotay comes into the mess hall late and he's looking for somebody to help him sleep. What is Neelix doing with that red pepper? It's like he's smelling it, but he's also measuring it against his hand. Like, that was some really weird actor business going on there. But also, I am not a fan of warm milk, so I agree with you there, Chakotay. I get it. But I'm also not really a fan of herbal tea, at least very few of them. I'm very, very picky about that, and I imagine Neelix's would not be good.
What if you put the warm milk in the herbal tea?
Maybe that would work. Maybe
is that like a chai tea?
Well, exactly. Maybe that would solve all the problems right there.
Okay.
I thought this was a very well-played scene with Neelix and his closeness to Chakotay and talking about feelings and all that. But I do think that Neelix's advice was so lame. Well, maybe the problem was you. Yeah. Which, look, he's not totally wrong. But also, Chakotay is still struggling with this idea that this is a new person who's only at this point been on board about a day or two. Like, not that long, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the cloaked ships that return, and they can't pinpoint where they are, didn't Seven already do that at the beginning with the astrometric sensors?
Yes. Keep it working. Like, you don't just get to do it once. And then we're done.
I guess you pay by the scene when you go to the astrometrics lab.
Oh, that must be it. Yeah. Fun scene with the ice cream. It just felt very personal and kind of natural sounding. It was a good bit of dialogue for them.
I'm glad you brought that up because I felt the same way. So there's something that's really wonderfully genuine about the way that Kellen laughs during this whole scene with the ice cream.
Yeah.
But I think that's more like we're catching a moment where the actors are peeking through more than the characters. And I think that was more Virginia's real laugh and Robert's like reaction to the scene, almost kind of like in an improv way than they wrote, laugh here, Kellen, ha 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 ha,
Right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. I think about times in Star Trek where somebody comes along and you don't know them that well. They're only going to be there for an episode. And like going all the way back to where No Man Has Gone Before, and Gary Lockwood just felt like he belonged there. He just felt like a guy who had been there for years and years because he was at ease there. He was a natural part of that group. And I think Virginia Madsen really pulls that off here as well. And a scene like that stands out for that reason, as opposed to, and folks, save your letters. I'm not just picking on DS9 here, but go back to moments in DS9 where I called out moments where Sisko laughs at something, and I felt like this is somebody who has never laughed before. And it broke the reality of the scene because the laugh felt so fake. And I love it when you have a moment of this realness come through because it works for the characters and it works for us.
Yeah, it's almost some people will perform that type of nuance theatrically so that the back rows can see it, and then some know that the medium that they're in can be captured a little bit more intimately. And I think that that's where the success of this scene is.
Yeah. Another good bit of dialogue. I love that little exchange between Chakotay and Tuvok. Chakotay calling out Tuvok. That was a joke.
That was a good scene.
That was great. And then Tuvok just going right through it, making the next joke and not acknowledging it.
Right.
That was so perfectly written. I did think it was kind of funny and a little interesting. Seven keeps noticing people's faces flush. But I mean, come on. Seven, you have the knowledge of so many species, including humans already. Haven't you figured out, haven't you studied the module on attraction yet? Because it just seems like you would know.
Yeah.
But I do love the follow-up there when Harry says, if you don't get it, I can't explain it to you. And she says, obviously.
Okay.
Come on.
I know that I've been very heavily critical about Harry and Seven's interactions in the past, and I think rightfully so. But I think in this case, I think this is probably, and this isn't saying a lot, but I'm going to give credit where credit's due. This is probably the most mature that they've written these two characters in a scene together since she's been on the show.
I agree. They're both, instead of it just always being dumping on Harry, there is actually a back and forth.
Right. There's a little
works.
pushback from Harry.
Yeah.
And again, but the bar was set woefully low for this to be able to jump over.
Exactly.
Right.
Can you explain something to me? That bit at the end where Kellen comes back into Chakotay's quarters and she thinks there's a tracer there. She's suspicious because there's a broken vase. And she says it's a vase. Mm-hmm. Were they drinking champagne out of a vase then? Because that's... she picks that up in the earlier bit when she's describing their last night together. We're drinking something with bubbles. Mm-hmm. And he says it was champagne. And she's holding that glass, which I thought, it's just a cool, weird, tall space glass. Mm-hmm. And she goes, there was a broken vase. And I'm like, but that's the champagne glass. So what is it?
That's
Do
why...
you not know?
I'm sorry, John, but that's why their last night together was so memorable.
Oh, okay. Okay,
right?
Now it all makes sense.
Because you're drinking out of a space vase or...
Right.
Yeah, space vase. So I have to give -5 points to Chakotay for his basically ridiculously slow draw on the tracer that fired on his would-be girlfriend in the end.
I pull the phaser and shoot. Before the tracer shoots. Kurneth, before he even pulls the trigger.
He literally stands there with weapon drawn. Chakotay looks, doesn't draw his weapon yet. Then he fires at her. Like, if that was a killing weapon, she would have been dead. So,
yeah. Oh, man. A chilling, wonderful bit of dialogue between Chakotay and Kurneth. Why not let the runaways go? There aren't that many of them. And he says, that would suggest we don't care about them. What a terrible message. Oh, and I thought that was so dark and wonderful.
It's
for a villain. Yeah. A villain who, like, by their logic, isn't a villain. But maybe we'll get into that in the discussion.
Okay, so I'm going to, not really a spoiler alert, but just a warning, because my voice may get loud in this next point. In the end of the episode, towards the end of the episode, Chakotay has pen and paper in his hand, or primitive writing implements, according to Neelix, or whatever he could replicate. So why didn't anyone do that earlier when she left the first time?
Chakotay should be careful shaking up that one guy. These are literally Etch-a-Sketch people.
We'll get right back to Unforgettable after a word from this week's sponsor, ExpressVPN. Everybody, I need you to listen to me for a second because I heard something mind-blowing. I mean, blow your mind. Ready? Okay? Here's what you need to know. When you search for something on Netflix, you're only getting a fraction of what Netflix actually has, because the Netflix library actually contains more than, get ready, drum roll please, 18,000 titles globally. But how many do you think that you're getting in the U.S. Netflix store? You're getting 6,000. That's it. Mm-hmm. You're getting a third of the titles that they have. You are missing out on literally thousands of great shows unless you use ExpressVPN.
That's geo-locking, I think the term is.
Mm-hmm. It is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Everybody just learned a new word today.
I looked that up. So how does ExpressVPN work? So ExpressVPN is an app that lets you change your online location so you can control where you want Netflix to think you're located and access those rest of those 18,000 titles to the 6,000 that you only can get to where you are. They have over 100 different locations, so you can gain access to thousands of news shows no matter where you live. I mean, why limit yourself when you don't have to? This works with many other streaming services too, like Disney+, Hulu, HBO Max, or just Max now. I think it's been rebranded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
BBC iPlayer, a few things that you've also experienced as well, John?
Oh, yeah, more than a few. And in fact, like when I launched ExpressVPN, first of all, I love the toggle that you can just change the country, and it is instantaneous. It is, you change it, boom, and then you're connected in another country. iPlayer, I am a big fan of because there is so much programming. I happen to love documentaries, and BBC has among the best of them, so I really appreciate that. And we've mentioned before on our show how, a little 58-year-old franchise called Star Trek, you can get a lot of those episodes, actually all of them, by changing your location through the Netflix portal and then seeing whatever you want. So again, it's quite easy. All I have to do is launch ExpressVPN, click connect, and then if it isn't already set to the country that I want to be coming from, I can just toggle it, change it to another one out of that list of more than 100, refresh Netflix or refresh whatever service I'm connected to, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah, based on the quality of the connection, it's super fast. You can stream everything in HD with no buffering, and it works on any device because it's an app. It can, work on your iPhone. You can work on your laptop, your tablet, your TV, because TV are all app-based right now. So whatever you're using, it just works. It's that simple. And it also encrypts your data. So ExpressVPN protects your privacy and security to keep you safe from hackers. Now, that's important too in this day and age where you're going from platform to platform across your different devices. So make sure that your security is intact with ExpressVPN.
So stop missing out on great TV and get thousands of new shows with ExpressVPN. And we got them to give you guys an extra 3 months free when you use our special link at expressvpn.com/missionlog. That's expressvpn.com/missionlog to get 3 extra months completely free. I have a quick technical question for you, Norman. If the Remurans are so good at obfuscating memory and even erasing tricorder readings, by the way, a technology that, they haven't had much encounter with, I mean, at least not Federation ones until now, Starfleet ones until now, how can the doctor's visual diagnosis work? He's part of the same computer and presumably based on the same technology that a tricorder uses.
So you're saying when he was doing his visual observations of her condition, she would be cloaked?
Yeah, I would think, because remember, he's got the tricorder there, he's scanning her, and then as soon as he scans her, the tricorder can't keep a record of anything. It is a non-recorder at that point. but he is... Done. Yeah, okay, but remember, he is just a collection of photons and ones and zeros projected by Voyager's computer. So presumably he's looking at her, the computer is processing that data, but just as the computer that operates the tricorder can't remember anything, it seems like the computer wouldn't be able to either. So the doctor would be like, yeah, I have no idea what I'm looking at right now.
I have a bigger question for you.
Okay, go right ahead.
If that's the case, then why does he need to use a tricorder anyway?
Okay, see?
Right?
It's like how Odo is just all the same stuff. The Doctor is just all the same stuff. He is a walking tricorder. He doesn't
Personally,
need
I'd rather see... I'd rather see the Doctor use a tricorder than Odo make coffee out of himself and then drink the coffee.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Yeah, nobody wants that. No.
All right, well, let's talk about our new Remuran friends for a moment. I was trying to sort of piece together the logic of their existence. And look, I get it right away that that's not what this episode is about. So bear with me while we just kind of do this as an intellectual exercise anyway. But I was trying to work through how they work and why they go to such lengths to live a covert existence. Because if they are so easily forgotten by anyone who encounters them, that seems like that would be protection enough. I mean, you mentioned chameleons earlier, the idea that they are already protected to the extent that evolution has allowed them to be protected because they change colors and can blend in. There's a lot of camouflage species in the natural world on Earth. This is the Remuran kind of camouflage, is that you forget. And I thought that would be enough. I guess even if you build technology that takes you out into the galaxy, although maybe not super far. It seems like you wouldn't necessarily need that either, because even if you get invaded or captured or whatever, your captors aren't going to know who you are. But then I kept thinking, well, maybe the same people keep showing up every Tuesday. So it's like the Kazon or whomever, they just show the Hirogen, they show up every Tuesday like clockwork because they forgot about last week how they tried to conquer the Remurans, and then it's just like the worst Groundhog Day ever for them.
I mean, it is comical in a way, the way you phrase it, because there is a broken logic that has to be applied, to the impetus of this alien species. I mean, it really reminds me a lot of, the alien species that invaded their dreams, because that's their defense mechanism.
Yeah, right. Right.
And we were like, well, if that's the case, like when is the waking dream? Is it when they're asleep? Is it just part of their condition when they're just living and breathing? Could they be awake and they can enter other people's waking dreams? My point of all that is we don't really get enough of the alien species of the week to make a sound judgment on why or why not certain things work in their culture, in their politics, in their religion, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a huge part of being a Star Trek fan. We love the granular study of these alien races. And that's happened in the handful of specific species that we've fallen in love with in the lore of Star Trek. Klingons, Vulcans, Romulans, Cardassians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Yeah.
So that goes along the line with, well, if we are introduced to an alien race, we want to know more. And if we don't get more, then we can't fit the logic of their culture into our story. And I have a huge diatribe of that a little bit later on.
Okay.
Well, not a little bit later on, maybe in the next point. Not really the next point, but I wanted to ask you something.
Okay.
Just in terms of the storyline, just in terms of the narrative, one thing that I feel that is problematic about this whole Remoran memory blocking biology that they have.
Yeah.
Why did Kellen change her mind to leave? Right?
Yeah.
Because she experienced whatever she experienced on Voyager as a tracer, as one of the people that she was eventually running from in a month's time.
Yeah.
So in that month, what compelled her to leave her world? Was it that she finally realized somewhere along the line that the person that she was bounty hunting and brought back to justice was executed? Right? Mm-hmm. And this is the secret that the Remorans are trying to protect about their species. That's why you don't leave, because if you leave, you have the ability to tell people how to find them.
So they're like the Sandmen, the Tracers are. They just go after and they kill the runners. Yeah.
But what happens when they find there is a moral dilemma at the time of turning in that person?
Well, that's really interesting because, okay, there could be this situation where the people who are the authority figures, who are the enforcers, who are Remorans, and that would be our Tracers, they have just enough knowledge that there is always the risk that they see the cracks in their own society. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, reading about defectors from Eastern Bloc countries during the Cold War. Like a lot of them, some of them just had their day-to-day experience and could tell the oppression that they were under anyway. But you had others who were more high-level defectors who were like, oh, no, I've seen this from the inside. I know what the problems are here, and I'm getting out because there is a better world out there for me. There's also something to be said simply for the power of love, with all due credit to Huey Lewis and the News, which ultimately I think is what this story is about. And we will get to that, of course, too. But I think there's something about that says that even the most carefully designed police state, and that's what I'm about to say that the Remorans are, even the most carefully designed and xenophobic and closed society you can create, you still can't account for things that are more powerful, like emotions, like connection. And I don't think that Kellen is the first person to have experienced this, but she might have been one of the first to get away for that long, presumably.
Yeah, or meet up with an alien species that was able to harbor her for a time.
Right. Right, yeah, that could very well be. This is what's wild about this episode, because we know enough about Kellen, I think, to like her and like the idea of her relationship with Chakotay. Like, there is something that plays very well about that. And we're pulling for them. We don't want her to get taken away and have her mind wiped out. I mean, that is an absolute horror. At the same time, what we don't get into in this episode is the very scary foundation that the Remueran society is built on. And yes, I said it earlier, the police state. And there's really no discussion or judgment from Chakotay or anybody else on Voyager until Kunreth, I'm going to get it wrong, so, don't at me.
I think it's Kurneth.
Right? Sure, that sounds good. There's no judgment or concern until he gets there to take Kellen away, because earlier, remember, Chakotay was like, yeah, Kellen, I'm going to help you do your job, and I'm going to take you at your word that this person that you're hunting down to hand back to the authorities is a really bad guy. Oh, what was his crime? He just wanted to leave? Yeah, I better help you with that because I'm in love with you, and that sounds like a good plan. We definitely do not investigate the politics or the potential what we would call human rights abuses. I know they're not human, but this is the filter that we have to look at this in. We definitely do not spend time looking at that or the abject horror that is a neurolytic emitter. And it is interesting because Star Trek every now and then has played fast and loose with the idea of, how many of our captains have said, oh, just erase their memory back to a certain point, and that'll resolve our problems here. That's a scary prospect no matter what. This society has created not just a technology around it, but they have built their whole political system around it, too. And as far as the Voyager crew goes, well, as long as Kellen is just one of ours and she has asylum and she's not doing that, I guess we're okay with it. But otherwise, the closer we get to the concerns of her society, this is a really terrifying thing that we're just going to sweep under the rug, apparently.
I'm not going to say I disagree with you on that, but I am going to
say you disagree with me, because that makes it fun.
Well, I mean, I just want to look at it from, again, kind of like this. If we're to believe this to be true, this series, and if we believe the logic of this series to be true and the reasoning that we're putting into their culture, the thing is we don't know enough about their culture to, I think, make a decision of where we're going to stand morally, based on their culture, based on the snapshot of the culture that they have. I have this in my notes as xenophobia to the nth degree. There is that scene in the brig at the end where Chakotay says to Kurneth, you have no right to do this. What Kurneth just did to Kellen. And Kurneth said, I have every right. The laws on our world are very specific about that. No one may leave. No one may reveal anything about us to the outside world. Kellen has violated both of those edicts. Returning her will serve as a deterrent to others who might think of leaving. Now, morally, I agree. I understand that from a human being standpoint.
Yeah.
But perhaps the reason why that they're able to live and thrive and exist as a culture and a society is because no one knows they're there.
Yeah, and for that matter, we get into a very tricky prime directive concern here, which is that their laws, as if I'm sort of for the game here, I'm contradicting myself. That their laws may exactly be the thing that allows them to survive. And if anybody were to come in and start changing those laws or pointing out the immorality of those laws, well, you could, by extension, be condemning that whole species to extinction. Definitely do not disagree with you there. That is a very real possibility. But I do think that it is a bit odd, the shift in tone, that we're going to go along with this and help you hunt down this person who is supposedly a criminal based on your perspective. And that's all fine and good, and we will pat ourselves in the back and sip champagne over our success.
Right.
Until we turn it around and now it's about somebody that I care about personally, and now it's not okay.
Well, yeah, that's the second point of what I wanted to get to, because, the exchange between Chakotay and Kurneth, I slightly, or mildly referenced earlier on, where Chakotay was very much like Kurneth with Kellen when they were having dinner and she was trying to establish the fact that they had a relationship. He just wanted the facts, ma'am. You know, he was just being his best Joe Friday and trying to figure out why she was on the ship and why she reached out to him personally, more personally than he or anyone else would have ever expected. And I found it fascinating because this is the one time, or one of the few times, that we see Chakotay's emotions really get the better of him in the brig scene.
Yeah.
I mean, he unlocked the brig, he put down the force field, and he grabbed the guy by his lapels and tried to shake kind of like sense into him from Chakotay's moral standpoint.
Yeah.
And he knows that he doesn't have a legal leg to stand on based on this culture that he doesn't understand. He can't help but react emotionally because of the way that he's feeling towards a woman he doesn't even really believe that he's in love with.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he is convincing himself through the course of actions that led him to this moment that he's doing the right thing, but he knows that Starfleet has no jurisdiction over the Remuran laws. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was hunting down a runaway with her to help her do exactly what Kerneth did to her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Except that he wasn't in love with the runaway earlier when she was on the ship. So is he or is he not violating the sovereign rights of this race, regardless of how he emotionally feels about her or how we morally feel about it?
See, and this is interesting because at no point does Janeway come into this. For those of you who are not watching this video, Norman just gave me the big, the point. Yes.
You got
that's it. I love the fact, actually, that Janeway at the beginning, when we have our showdown, are we or are we not giving her asylum? And Janeway has to rely on the information that Chakotay has gotten up to this point to make that call. Is she telling the truth or is she not? Can we safely give her asylum? Can we not? You get to make the call. I thought that was a great scene. It was one of the few times that Janeway will ever just go to her first officer and say, you make the call. Fantastic. Fast forward to Act 5. Chakotay barges into this brig, and he is ready to give this guy what for. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve it, but we leave absolutely no window here for the captain to come in and say, wait a minute, we're out of bounds here because this is what's going on with this society's rules. This is not our fight. Even though we gave her asylum, now the situation is different because now the reality is this guy is here and he has already exacted the quote-unquote justice of their planet, which is to use a neurolytic emitter.
It's easy for me to say as a computer, but these people really need a memory upgrade.
Norman, thank you for an unforgettable discussion on Mission Log. Really appreciate it. I like to think that all of our discussions are unforgettable. This one was particularly nice about the episode, Unforgettable. I don't think we need to explain the title here. I think it is pretty self-apparent. But as we do at the end of every episode, we're going to discuss morals, meanings, messages, and we're going to ask each other if the episode holds up, which is always purposefully a loaded and vague question. So, Norman, I ask you to start. Does Unforgettable hold up?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say, just to clarify certain things, I'm really glad that I'm reading notes because I'm not exactly sure if I remember what I should remember about this episode, but I'm glad that I had a pen and paper to be able to get everything down that I needed to remember.
I'm glad you wrote it down, and I'm glad that a virus was not anywhere present to wipe out those notes because, this would have been a very difficult section of the show to do if you didn't have your notes.
Just as surprised as you are to see what I had to say.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to start off with our very smart and beloved audience knows me well enough by now to probably
you're buttering them up. I love it.
to probably anticipate what I'm probably going to say about this episode. But here's my honest and truly unironic take on it. I really liked this episode.
You get a golf clap from me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a difference between what I like and what I believe holds up. And I will explain that, how I personally feel that there is a difference between the two. What I like here, John, what I like.
Yeah.
Hopefully that golf clap still stands.
Yeah.
This episode connects with me in my personal preferences in storytelling. I am somewhat of a romantic, and I am a bit biased and a little bit more easily swayed where romantic stories are concerned. I really did love the chemistry between Virginia Madsen and Robert Beltran. It worked for me. From the moment they saw each other, it just worked. And that laugh they had together when she was eating ice cream was perfection. Absolutely perfection. One of the finer moments that I've seen in Star Trek. Their chemistry just was very organic from the start, and it really helped sell Kellen's story about the two of them falling in love. And then the heartbreak of forgetting, well, with both her and Chakotay, forgetting and falling prey to the very same pattern of each other's journey in this story at the end. When I realized that he was convincing Kellen about being affected by the Tracer's memory weapon, that they were in love and they were working together after she recently just tried to convince him of the same thing, that worked for me, right?
Yeah.
As a concept of star-crossed and doomed romantic lovers. As a concept. Right?
Yeah. Okay. I get what I hear you.
Yeah.
Lay it on us.
But here's how it doesn't hold up for me as an episode of Star Trek. For one, as an episode of Star Trek, and two, as a world-building episode that further really pushes the narrative in Voyager, and certainly not one that does anything to help add to Chakotay's character. And this is where I'm most disappointed, right? We finally get a rare Chakotay-focused story, and in my opinion, the time used here isn't spent wisely on furthering and advancing his character. Many times in this episode, Kellen said, "You're a gentle man, you're a kind man." We know that. That's been established many times, and literally with the same words to describe Chakotay's character. And the one glimmer of really him changing his personality into the extreme was when he was throttling the Tracer in the brig because he was emotionally invested in what was happening. That was a good moment, and we don't see enough of that side of Chakotay where he's pushed to a certain boiling point because he's only human, right? So I think that, again, in the matter of opinion of what I like versus what I believe is better for the series, I do believe that we could have gotten a little bit more out of this episode. But to end on a very more positive note, I think that Virginia Madsen was perfect as Kellen. She walked a very good balance between strong and vulnerable. And I think she's always been really good at these types of character archetypes.
Yeah. That's great, man, because what I like about what you just said is that, first of all, this is an episode I like very much, and I'll explain why in a moment.
Well, golf clap to
but
you.
But I think your criticisms are really on point. They make a lot of sense about what didn't work. And as you're describing that, I'm thinking about an episode we just did very recently, Vis-a-Vis, and how that was an episode where Robert Duncan McNeill got to really stretch in his portrayal in what he does on Voyager. But in the universe of the show, none of it counts because most of what was happening there was not really happening to Tom Paris. And you just have this regression and then this really mini arc for Tom himself. So it's like we get to wipe the slate clean at the end of the episode. And there are times in Voyager where I can say, okay, hitting the reset button is fine. If you're doing Year of Hell Part 1 and Part 2, I maintain that that's how you have to end that episode. You have to hit the reset because by nature it is this not time travel, but a timey-wimey reset the timeline type of story. But when it comes to our characters, if you take the characters and you stretch them out, but then wipe away all of that, it really feels like a cheat. And what you just said is right. We got all this great stuff with Chakotay, but tomorrow it doesn't count. And that is a real tragedy here because we actually got to push that character, do some interesting stuff with him. And, you know, even if his best scenes were eating ice cream and then confronting Kurneth in the brig, and none of it matters tomorrow. That's really a shame. But like you, I'm really a softie when it comes to these types of romantic stories. And I think in this episode, there is so much to like. I think the story unfolds pretty nicely between balancing the technical and the emotional. Yeah, we have to do the hand waving at first, but then the story just decides, okay, we're telling this personal story, not the technological story. I like that we are also allowed a bit of suspicion about Kellen, but in the end, it's still not about turning her into a manipulative antagonist or anything like that. It really is just about the cyclical version of this love story. That makes it really appealing. It is funny how this script just works. Like, there are great moments of dialogue, which we pointed out, the corridor scene with Chakotay and Tuvok. Little moments like that are so good. Even the Seven of Nine and Harry Kim exchange are better than what we have gotten up until now. And we get just enough about Kellen to like her and understand the attraction between her and Chakotay, but we also get just enough about the Remurans to understand why she'd want to escape and maybe why we can't do anything about it. Now, if this were the original series, Kirk would talk down their leader and threaten to blow up the planet. But this is a different kind of Star Trek, and this is a way more intimate story. And there really is a heart here, and Virginia Madsen is great at expressing it. She is the heart of this episode. Even just the subtlest thing, like we said, that look that she gives Chakotay at the end as she is about to beam away, just wow, that is an unforgettable moment of this episode. Yeah,
I see what you did there. I do want to push back just a little bit on one thing.
Yeah, please.
So when you said that we got just enough about the Remorns to understand why she'd want to escape, I think they could have gone just a little bit more and put a little bit more tragedy into why she brought that bounty back. And that's what gave her the catalyst to say, you know what, this is not what I want to do anymore.
Yeah, I think that's fair what you're saying. I mean, I feel like we get how disturbing it would be to live like that all the time, and that there are some people who totally buy into the ideology of the system, but there also has to be cracks in that. And she, for whatever reason, has gotten to this point where it is just appealing enough that she can take that next step. But here's the thing. How often are the Remurans using this neurolytic emitter on each other all the time?
Right.
So somebody comes back from a mission and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Boom, neurolytic emitter again. And we're going to wipe that part out of you. So that might just be an ongoing thing in their world. We don't know.
A lot of Men in Black stuff going on there.
A lot, yeah. Right. I do think that the whole premise is a very pulpy kind of sci-fi story. You know, it just saying the idea, well, it's this alien species and they can wipe your memory and they wipe your computer and you don't know that they were there the next day. And like, that is a very pulpy thing that is a big ask of the audience. But I think here's what Star Trek does well. It's taking that high concept premise and then shaping it into a mature story. And the mature story here is the relationship, which is really nice to see. I agree with you, Norman. It is not critical to the rest of Voyager's journey, but I think that's by design. We get to have a one-off like this. It does work to peel back layers of characters like Chakotay, give him a bit of an emotional life, but I think the letdown is that it doesn't stick to next week and the next week and the next week. That's too bad. So I'm going to come down on the side of it holding up only because we got to explore Chakotay more. I think, depending on the day that you catch me, I might say that it doesn't hold up. Only because the changes, the exploration doesn't stick. What did you learn here? Tell me about morals, meanings, messages, if any.
Well, there was like an interesting study that, at least for myself, that I applied to this episode, and it's looking at the moral law versus the cultural law aspect of this episode. And I think I mentioned this before a little bit in discussion, and I wanted to save some of those comments for here. I'm more curious about something that it was a little bit more of a loose end for me here, and who is on the right side of the legality of the situation? You know, is it Voyager and Starfleet and Chakotay, or is it the Remorans trying to protect their own culture albeit it's a culture that we don't know anything about, but maybe that's the point. So in this episode, Kellen requests asylum from Voyager because she's being pursued by the very people she used to work for. That's the premise, right? Mm-hmm. Does the concept of asylum mean the same outside of human law, or in this case, Starfleet law versus Remoran law? Sometimes these concepts, again, looking at it from an alien standpoint, if we're going to project ourselves into the alien standpoint of point of view, what does the morality mean when it comes to that particular word? Because they use it very specifically in this episode. I request asylum. She has asylum. She's protected by asylum. That's the heart of her defense, this word. And it's Chakotay's attitudes towards defending her desire to be protected and to find refuge and safety on Voyager. And this is also political, because asylum is also a political defense for refugees. Now, here's something that you and I talked about earlier. We don't know anything or very little about the Remoran culture as a whole. And based on their cultural defense in secrecy, perhaps we never will. Maybe that's the point of what they're doing. In the world building of Voyager, maybe this race has survived because of this very fact. So without more information to go on, is granting Kellen asylum the correct course of action? The immediate moral choice through Chakotay is yes. We, the audience, seeing the moral choice being exacted by Chakotay in his character building. But what if there are further repercussions of this choice that we may or may not see? We believe that Starfleet, by and large, can do no wrong based on the moral application of Starfleet law as it applies to maybe the Alpha Quadrant. This is a completely different rule set in the Delta Quadrant. Now, I know we have to shorthand things like, and hand wave things like language is a barrier with a lot of the stuff that we do here on Voyager, or just dissecting Star Trek. But I would have liked to have seen more delving into the Remoran culture and why Kellen wanted to escape. I've mentioned that before. But I also wanted to see how this would have maybe expanded more of the political conversation on Voyager, aside from just Chakotay and maybe Tuvok, right? You brought up that Janeway wasn't really involved, and that would have been interesting since it was a political request for protection that Kellen wanted. So I'm wondering if in doing so, and in violating perhaps the Remoran cultural law, that it would have just furthered their political problems as they moved further into the Delta Quadrant on their way to the Alpha Quadrant. And I think that that's something that needs to be considered when it's just, again, hand-waving the fact that they can do it.
Right.
But what are the actual consequences of? And I think that's something that sometimes it would add more to the weight of what we're taking away from an episode, and I don't think it was here. But I think it was important.
I want more of this. Yeah. I really do. I think it's such an interesting idea. Yeah. I think for morals, meanings, message, or just kind of lessons or ruminations in this episode, they do focus on this romantic story, and I think that's fine. I think it's very good, actually. And maybe for Kellen and Chakotay, my piece of advice is shared by the great Diana Ross and later by Phil Collins, who said, "You can't hurry love. No, you just have to wait." And they do. They do, both of them. It doesn't take long, but it does work out until it doesn't. It was interesting that, even when the crew check out her story at first and the facts do line up, that she can't just make Chakotay feel the same way that he did before, because of course. and I think she knew that intellectually. And of course, Chakotay, I think, knew that intellectually for himself at the end. But emotionally, they so desperately want it to be true. They want that love to just rekindle, to respark. And those things take time. And we're not just in control of turning those emotions on and off. So is it better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all? Do we have kind of a cop-out here? Because in the end, Kellen doesn't remember and Chakotay can't remember. He won't be able to remember the next day. I really like Neelix's rumination about not being able to predict love, how any one tiny variable might make or break that connection. And if we could predict it, then we'd take away its power. I thought, given that there was kind of a weak Neelix scene in here, that one really put the button on it. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to hear his perspective, him being the one to dispense that kind of advice.
And maybe that's something that he learned or maybe remembered about his relationship with Kes. That would have been nice to have brought up.
That's, yeah. Let's just retcon that right away.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a great point. But there's something here that really touched me, and it's not even necessarily what this episode is about. But I thought it was such an emotionally impactful scene, and we didn't really discuss it. Because it's just a blip. It's just a short moment. And to me, it speaks to the humanity of this very alien situation. There's this moment in the episode that just hit me right in the heart because it was so essentially human. When we see these two characters, Chakotay and Kellen, however alien they may be, it is always about us. Star Trek is always about us. And it's always about the part of our humanity that's reflected in these characters. I've seen it in family members. I'm sure that you have. I'm sure that some of our listeners have too, where there's memory loss. And that may come to somebody early in life. It may come to some people late in life. And there's this navigation that happens around that. And the awareness when that happens. The scene of Kellen laying in sickbay and asking Chakotay to remember her. It felt like that kind of conversation that happens over and over when someone is losing their memory. And like I said, some of those people are aware of it and some of them aren't. And in the end, we on the other side, all we can do is be there and treat them with dignity and love and compassion and offer to help them in any way that we can to ease the pain of not remembering.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. If you would like to support us directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog for early access to shows and the Mission Log Discord. Our website is missionlogpodcast.com. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Living Witness.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. Special thanks to consulting producers, Matt Esposito, Homer Frizzell, Tom Kozak, Julie Miller, Mike Richards, Mike Shadwell, Paul Shadwell, and David Takechi. Welcome to the Delta Quadrant. I forgot what I was going to say here. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.